is the Happy Scientist Podcast. Each episode is designed to make you more focused, more productive, and more satisfied in the lab. You can find us online at bitesizebio.com/happy scientist. Your hosts are Kenneth Vogt, founder of the executive coaching firm Vera Claritas, and Dr. Nick Oswald, Ph.D., bioscientist and founder of Bitesize Bio.
Hello and welcome to the Happy Scientist Podcast from Bitesize Bio. If you want to become a happier, healthier and more productive scientist, you are in the right place. I'm Nick Oswald, the founder of bitesizebio.com, and with me, the main man of this podcast is Kenneth Vogt. I have worked with Ken for over 7 years now, with him as my business mentor and colleague, and I knew that his expertise could help a lot of researchers, including you. So in these sessions, we will hear mostly from Ken on principles that will help shape you for a happier and a more successful career. And along the way, I'll pitch in with points from my personal experience as a scientist and from working with Ken. Today, we will be talking about the empirically supported benefits of mindfulness. But before we begin, remember that in episodes 1 to 9 of this podcast, we talk about the foundational principles of human needs, core mindsets, and charisma factors, which we refer to in all future episodes. So if you find this episode useful, please go back to the beginning and listen to episodes 1 to 9 to get an understanding of these life-changing concepts. So let's bring in the man himself. Kenneth, mindfulness. Tell us about it.
Okay. This may seem like the topic where I've finally gone off the edge. It's like, all right, he's danced around being scientific about things, but this time he's picked a topic that is just too far out there. It's just too woo-woo. But I'm going to prove to you through the show notes, among other things, that it's really not that far out there. And in fact, where it came to mind for me didn't come from any other sources other than Ph.D. scientists. And again, the show notes are going to prove that. I make note of 6 different studies. I point to 2 different podcasts. I point to a couple of different books. And these are all by people who are deeply in the black and white rational world. This is what it's all about. And go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, so mindfulness gets a lot of woo-woo attention. But it really just means paying attention more, yeah?
It does. It's just, seeing. Exactly. And in fact, the thing that first captured my attention about this for this audience even was I was listening to a podcast called Science Friday, which is hosted by Ira Flato, and he had commented on mindfulness being a proven methodology to help you be more effective on more than one occasion. And I just kept going back to that. It's like, boy, this is not the guy I would expect to be talking about this. But then I started doing some more research on it, and the Harvard Review was all over this, and a variety of other serious academic sources. And so I just picked out I picked out a number of interesting studies that I've commented on in the notes here, but they are hardly the only ones. And there's so many benefits here to being mindful that you're just going to see that it's just worth it for you in your career, in your job, to be happier, to be more content with your work. Now, another thing that may put some people off here is mindfulness can be a code word for meditation. And you might think, oh, meditation, oh, here we go. He's finally stepped over the line here. This is going to become all spiritual and religious and esoteric and philosophical. And it's like, no, it's really not. And in fact, one of the people that I recommend that you look into, and the podcast by this person is Sam Harris, his Making Sense podcast. He's a Ph.D. neuroscientist. He is probably one of the premier atheists of the day. He's very much a proponent of atheism. And I want to be clear here. I'm not telling anybody to be atheist. I'm not telling anybody to be religious. I'm not telling anybody to be spiritual. You don't have to be a Christian or a Buddhist or a Hindu or anything else to use mindfulness. In fact, that's kind of the point that Sam Harris makes, that it isn't coming from those places. It's just some of those places happen to also use it. But let's not be down on something because it is being used by someone that we don't agree with. Everybody still drinks water. Everybody still breathes air. Even those that you don't agree with on a fundamental level. Whether it's politics or religion or what flavor dessert to have. These are just fundamental things, and they don't come from those places. They are just used by those places because they work. It's just the same way as you can get a Bachelor of Science degree or you can get a Bachelor of Arts degree, and they use the same basic format. You go to university, you go to classes, you have professors, there are textbooks, it's all the same stuff. It's just something you can use that works. So a question would be, well, why would I care about mindfulness? I mean, okay, fine. It's not harmful. It's not associated with anything evil that I don't want to touch. But why would I want to, right? Well, there are 4 things that popped up in my research on this that I think that you're going to want. One is improved attention. There are a number of studies that show that mindfulness improves attention, and that means better performance on objective tasks that require an extensive concentration span. Does that sound familiar? Does that sound like your life, your work? Well, wouldn't improved attention be valuable to you? Wouldn't it be useful? Wouldn't it make your job less stressful?
So maybe it would be worth taking a side step and explaining what mindfulness is then, because to me, the main thing that comes to mind about mindfulness is that it's just about paying more attention to things. But
it's about...
Well, if attention is just one of the benefits, there must be more to it than that.
Yeah, there is. There is. But it's about being present in the moment. And that is being present with what's happening right now, what's right here. And not being caught up in the past or caught up in the future or caught up on other topics that aren't related to what you're presently focusing on. It's about just being purely with what's happening right now.
Rather than all the stories your brain is telling you about forgetting to get something for dinner or what happened yesterday and stuff like that.
Exactly, and worry and anxiety and not just negative things like that, but because even positive things can get in your way. If you're excited about some event that's coming up in the future, or you're really looking forward to an upcoming vacation, it can take your mind away from what you're working on now and can do damage. You become less effective, and you miss things that are important. And they might be bad things that you miss, or it might be good things that you miss. So there's a lot to be said for being present and just in this moment saying, okay, for right now, I'm about this. And I'm not going to worry about my kids right now. And I'm not going to be thinking about my weight. And I'm not going to be concerned about my love life. And I'm not going to be thinking about the jerk that I have for a boss. I'm just doing this task right now, and I'm with it, and I'm giving my all to it. And again, this is just about giving 100%, not 110%, just being fully present, but no more than fully present. So, improved attention is just one of the benefits. Let's look at some others. How about emotional regulation? Mindfulness is associated with emotional regulation across a number of studies. So, it creates changes in your brain, actual physical changes that correspond to less reactivity and better ability to engage in tasks even when emotions are activated. Now you think, well, why would that matter? Well, think about it. If you're working with other people, is there not an emotional component? If you are stressed about the work that you're doing right now. Is there not an emotional component? If something goes wrong with what you're working on, is there not an emotional component? We have to remember that we are present with what's happening. We're part of the experiment. And if emotions get involved to a certain, if they get over involved, it starts to get in the way, and it starts to become a problem. It could actually impact the results you get, but even less than that, it impacts the experience you're having with doing it, making your job harder, making your career more stressful, and making you wonder, why am I doing this for a living? I could have been working at McDonald's. And so this idea of being able to more easily regulate your emotions becomes important. Now, some of you out there might be really locked down on this, really feel like, emotional control is not a big deal for me. But others of you are going to hear this and go, yeah, I know what you mean. It might be you get too passionate about things, or you get too angry about things, or you get too frustrated too easily. You can think about it, because it doesn't have to necessarily be a negative emotion. It could be a positive emotion. You could get too excited about things too, and it causes you to lose track of what's right in front of you, and you miss things, and you don't see flaws when they pop up with it you really need to see, or errors. You don't see problems until after they're too late to fix. So this concept of emotional regulation becomes really important. So let me throw that one to you, Nick. Have you seen emotion ever be an issue in the lab?
Well, I mean, it's the same as anything. If you're something's going on in your personal life and you have a task that you need to focus on, either a physical task or a mental task, and you're too busy thinking about what's going on in your personal life to give it that focus, then that's going to impact the quality of work you do.
Sure. And it can even be things that aren't external. It could be the people you're working with right now are causing an emotional response, and that impacts the work. So,
the bottom line is your brain's always trying to your mind seems to always be trying to pull you to some problem that it thinks you need to focus on at the moment, to worry about, or to go over and over in your head, and all of that's taken away from the focus of the thing that you need to, the experiment you need to focus on, or the paper you need to focus on, or whatever. Right. Another good one is if you're, one thing that I really find this useful for is if you're giving a presentation, and if you're really nervous and you're focusing on what might go wrong, that's all a story that's spinning around in your head, and that literally makes it more likely worrying about doing badly in a presentation will literally make you do badly in a presentation.
Right, exactly. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, and we all know people, and perhaps we know them intimately as ourselves, who, whenever they encounter an uncertain situation, their response is, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" What a way to look at the world. But that's part of emotional regulation. So the next thing that's interesting that comes out of some of these studies is the idea that mindfulness will allow you to have greater compassion. So people randomly assigned to mindfulness training were more likely to help someone in need and to have greater self-compassion. Now you might think, well, what does compassion have to do with my work? Actually, it has quite a bit to do with your work. Often the work that we're doing, that you are doing as scientists in the lab, is contributing to the improvement of mankind. So in that regard, it is a deeply compassionate work. But there's also compassion that has to do with the people you're working with. If you're working with people and they're all stressed out all the time, or they're all wore out, your interaction with them is going to be impacted by how mindful you are. And you could actually be a great support to other people. And that might be people you work with, might be people that work for you, it might be people that you work for. But having greater compassion will actually make you a better worker, and it will make you somebody that other people will enjoy working with. Then on top of that is the notion of self-compassion, that you don't have to be so hard on yourself. You can see things more clearly and realize, this is what I can do and this is what I can't do. And you get clearer on what the boundaries are. And it's much easier to be satisfied when that's how you see the world. So I hesitate for other comment there, Nick, in case you wanted to add anything.
I was just waiting until you went through through all of the benefits, because...
Okay, well, let me hit the last one then, and then I will throw you the mic. The last one, and this one's one everybody's going to want: reduction of stress and anxiety. Mindfulness reduces feelings of stress and improves anxiety control, and helps you get rid of distress when you're placed in a stressful situation. And the fact is there's lots of potential stressful situations in the lab. So wouldn't you want to get free of stress and anxiety? Well, mindfulness is part of the answer to that. So, okay, go ahead, Nick.
Okay, so my thoughts are, mindfulness is always something that's kind of, it's so cliched in a way that it's something that's always kind of, I find it hard to gel with the idea of this. So what we're saying here is, mindfulness is paying attention to the present moment rather than, or what is happening right now in front of you, rather than what you imagine happened in the past or in the future. What you remember happened in the past or what you imagine happening in the future. And from that, you get improved attention, improved emotional regulation, greater compassion, and reduction of stress and anxiety. Why do you get all of that?
Well, I might want to push you to look at all these studies that are cited for this, but there's a number of reasons why. And I think we've kind of hit on a few of them. When we are not focused on the present, when we are spending mental cycles on the past or on the future, then we are reducing our ability to do the task in front of us, and we are wearing ourselves out. We're burning energy, both physical energy and emotional energy.
Okay, so that's easy to hang on to for me then. That you can, you treat it like you realize that your mind is kind of like a computer, and if you're using up lots of RAM running processes in the background about what happened yesterday or what might happen tomorrow, then you're not leaving enough bandwidth. That's not the correct term, but you know what I mean. You're not leaving enough bandwidth to give your all to the thing that's happening in front of you.
Exactly.
Whether that's a task, so that would be improved intention, improved attention. Whether it's a person, that would be greater compassion. I guess emotional regulation. You're not getting pulled into these what might happen stories. You're focusing on what's right in front of you. Okay, that makes sense to me. So it's with that kind of computer analogy.
Yeah. This
is about focusing all of your RAM on what's right in front of you.
Right. So basically, you're reducing drains on yourself, and the drain might be physical, as I said. It could be emotional. It could be mental. There are situations where you don't need much physical energy, and so it's fine. You don't worry about it. But at that moment, you really might need to have intellectual energy. You really might need to focus your mind. And now any drain there is going to cost you. In other areas would be like, I've got an emotional drain here, and it's costing me. And sometimes you might think, well, hey, this isn't a hard task physically, so who cares if I'm drained physically? But these things don't compartmentalize perfectly. So a physical drain will take an emotional and a mental toll on you, and a mental drain will take a physical and emotional toll on you, across the board. And that's easy enough to see. We've all had that happen, where we worked out so hard at the gym we can't think straight, or we had a very emotional interaction with something and it drained us physically, or we something very demanding mentally, and therefore we had a very short fuse emotionally. So we know these things cross over.
And if you like look at a situation where you've had an intense period of stress, for example, where the stress comes from not focusing on what's happening in front of you, it's focusing on what you need to do next or what might happen if you don't do this and so on, then that, say you're writing your thesis, for example, is an extremely stressful period for a lot of people. It's emotionally stressful, so that becomes really physically draining, even though you're only moving your fingers to type.
Right. So if you were looking at this at the beginning and saying, it doesn't seem like it's that big a deal for me to be mindful, because that's not a big problem for me. I focus my mind really well. Yes, but it touches these other areas, and these other areas touch it. So the idea here shouldn't be that you're so mentally tough that you can take all the abuse of being emotionally or physically not present. Well, don't put yourself in that position. The idea here isn't to survive your job and your career. The idea is to thrive in it and to enjoy it.
And by the way, you'll do a better job if you do that, if you thrive and enjoy it.
Exactly. And you don't have to sign up for something where, I'm just gonna keep burning the candle at both ends until I drop, or hopefully I'll make it to the end end of the line before I drop. That we're not running this death march here. This isn't a race to beat self-annihilation. This should be something where it's an upward spiral for you, where your life gets better and better, and that is certainly possible. And mindfulness will help you with that.
Very nice. Yeah, I mean, it's all about once you start thinking about your brain as an instrument that you focus on you focus on a problem that's in front of you or a task that's in front of you, then it's much, for me, it's much easier to see that wasting CPU cycles or whatever you want to call it on paying attention to something that's not actually happening right now is damaging in the short term, but especially in the long term.
Right. And I'll make a comparison to something that, and I'm even going to make up a word for it right now, but it's a concept I think we're all familiar with. How about, in addition to mindfulness, bodyfulness? We all realize that if I keep this body healthy and in shape, well, then every other part of my life gets better. Every other part of my life is easier. Well, it's the same thing. And if you bother to go to the gym, you bother to get up when it's still dark and go out and run, it is every bit as worthwhile to do the same thing for your mind that you regularly do for your body. Now, okay, so we'll look at that, because here's the thing. One of the books that I recommended below are by a very fascinating author called Yuval Noah Harari. And Yuval Noah Harari is a Ph.D. historian, but his writing is more like modern day anthropology, and he's just a brilliant guy that has really great insight into what's happening in the world today. And I realize that it might be a little different topic than you're used to reading about, but he really, really understands people, and as I say, from an anthropological standpoint than a psychological standpoint, and the link points to all of his books. He's not written a bad book, and he's got a great voice. But here's the thing.
Just to tell people who are wondering, by the way, you can get this the links to the books that Ken is referring to by going to bitesizebio.com/The Happy Scientist, finding this episode, which is episode 21, and then downloading the show notes that are linked to from that page.
Right. No worries. So I know you all have a lot of reading that you're supposed to do, but this is part of your fun reading. The stuff the stuff that you would read just because it's interesting, and you don't have to. But it's worthwhile. And the reason I point to this particular author is not just because he is, a highly educated man. It is because he is a hardcore meditator. He meditates himself an hour every morning and an hour every evening. He's really, really deep into this. Yeah, this guy's a marathoner when it comes to mindfulness. Now, I know you hear that and go, well, that lets me out. I'm not going to do that. And I'm not recommending that. And in fact, he's not even recommending that. In his books, he doesn't really talk about that. I only know that because of interviews with him. But, again, another person I think you ought to pay attention to is Sam Harris with Making Sense. And he, too, even though he's a neuroscientist, and even though he is an avowed atheist, he is a very accomplished meditator. And, to the point where he's done retreats to India and, he's done a lot of things. And he has studied it from the standpoint of neurophysiology. What is happening when you meditate? We're not going to go into all that right now. But what I am going to do is show you a way that's simple, because you don't have to go to a Buddhist temple. You don't have to become a Hindu. You don't have to do any of this stuff to be mindful and to take yourself simply to a mindful place. So I'm going to show you a 3-minute meditation routine, and we're actually going to do it right now. Yeah, it's not hard, and it's something that anyone can do, and it's the kind of thing that it is worthwhile for you to do if you do it every day. And it's a great practice. You can do it multiple times a day. You can do it for longer than 3 minutes too, if you're feeling it, and it's you can feel the benefits coming to you. It really can help you order your world. If you feel chaotic, if you feel stressed, if you feel like there's too much uncertainty, this is a very grounding activity. And there's nothing special about this. You don't have to learn any mantras or mudras. There's nothing hocus pocus about this. It is merely taking your mind and telling it to calm down.
Yeah, so that's the purpose here, is just to calm. It's like giving your body a stretch, and yoga stretch. Telling it to kind of resetting it. Okay.
Exactly.
There's a reason to do it, so let's do it.
Yeah. Well, and one more thing I want to say, but in the setup for this, is one of the things you've probably heard about meditation is the objective is to empty your mind. And I think for most of us, we go, oh, you're telling me I'm supposed to stop having thoughts. Well, that's not going to happen. And it's true. It won't happen. You can't turn off thoughts. And it's very interesting to take note of that and be aware that, thoughts just kind of happen. And you don't almost ever create a thought on purpose. Thoughts wander on by. They just present themselves to you, and then you make a choice whether or not I'm going to keep this thought, take ownership of this thought, or let it pass by. Because we've probably all had thoughts where we went, oh no, I'm not going there. That's happened. Maybe it's a dark thought, or maybe it's a frightening thought. They're like, no, I'm not. I refuse to be that afraid. And we just discard it. And then other ones come by, and we go, oh, yeah, that might happen. That could be real. And we take it in. And sometimes they're negative. Sometimes they're positive. Sometimes they're neutral. Sometimes you can't tell whether they're positive or negative. And for whatever reason, you embrace them. But what we're going to do now in this 3-minute meditation is we're going to take a break from thoughts. Now, that doesn't mean you're not going to have them. It just means that whatever thoughts come by in this little exercise, you're just going to thank them and send them on their way. That's it. So when a thought arrives, thank you for sharing, and let it keep on going. Don't take ownership of any thought that comes your way. Now, some of you are probably panicking right now. What if I have a really great thought? I promise you it'll show up again. So don't worry about it. And there's nothing that's going to happen in these 3 minutes that's going to be critical to your life, where if you miss this window, it's all over for you. That's not going to happen. And that kind of thinking is why you're having a hard time staying mindful, because you keep thinking that every thought that comes by your way is coming with a a clanging bell and a warning signal. And you got to realize these things are just happening. So if you can watch them, just watch them float on by and not take ownership of them and not examine them. It's like looking out a car window and without fixing your sight on anything, just watching the stuff go by. And so there's the telephone poles and the trees and the people walking on the sidewalk and the person walking their dog and the car at the stoplight. And they just go by. They're just there. They don't have any meaning. They don't matter. And none of them are impacting you. They're not none of it's jumping in front of your car as you're going by. It's just there on the side of the road. And you're not even driving. You're just the passenger in this car. So you still get to watch the scenery, but you don't have to make a bunch of meaning out of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So in terms of the analogy that I was using earlier, your brain is kind of an instrument. It's a computer. Mm-hmm. These are thoughts are being suggested by your brain, and you get to choose whether you assimilate them or let them just go by.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Okay. So what I'd like everybody to do, and for those of you that are driving right now or doing something where you can't do this, it's fine. Don't do this right now, but come back and do it later. And I'm going to do a guided meditation for you here. So you don't have to do anything. All you can do is sit there. So just get in a comfortable seat, and if there's anything that's bothering you, if you need to take off your shoes, or you need to take off your glasses, or whatever you need to do that. Get yourself prepared and just get comfortable. And now what we're going to do is we're going to give you something to focus on other than your thoughts. And that simple thing is something that everybody's going to be doing anyway during this, and that is your breath. All we're going to do is focus on your breath. So close your eyes and take a deep breath, and then exhale it fully out. Feel what that breath is like. Then take in another deep breath. Feel that going in. And then let it go out. Fully let it out. So now you know what breath feels like. Now you have something that can take your attention. And so you can just keep breathing. Breathe in. Breathe out. And focus on your breathing. And feel the breathing. Every day you breathe all day long and you don't notice it at all. But now you're going to notice it. Now, in between the time that you take in a breath and you let out a breath, or the time that you let out a breath and you take in a breath, there's another little moment there. Notice that moment in between. There's nothing there. It's just empty. But it's not incomplete. It's just there. And you keep noticing your breathing. Keep noticing the space in between the breathing. Sometimes, in that space, you'll notice a thought go by. Let that happen. You're not repressing that thought. You're just not giving it any heed at this moment. Because right now you're just sitting and briefly meditating. There's nothing else that you have to do right now. Nothing is so pressing that it has to have your attention at this moment. So when a thought comes by, if you have a reaction to that thought, you feel an emotion about that, well, that emotion is just another thought. It's a thought you're having in your body rather than in your mind. And fine, let that go by. And see if you can't just be free of thoughts for a moment. can't you just let it go and not think for a moment? And if another thought should arise, just wish it well and send it on its way. Thank you for sharing. Notice your breathing. Breathing in, breathing out. And notice the space between the breathing in and the breathing out. You will notice that you are getting calmer and clearer. Sometimes a thought will come by more than once, just like an insistent child. And once again, just tell it, thank you for sharing, and let it go on its way. Notice your breath. Go in, go out, and notice the space in between the breath. And notice those silences, those emptinesses, and notice how pure they feel and how good they feel. And know that they are opening up a space for you to do great things. And that concludes our meditation. Now, some of you right now are going, oh man, could we keep going? Absolutely you could. and you will find that if you make this a regular part of your day, the start of your day especially is a good time to do it, or the end of your day is a good time to do it, you may be surprised that the 3 minutes that you set aside becomes 20 or 30 because you didn't want to stop. And after you're done, don't you feel a little more free? Don't you feel a little bit less stressed? So I'll put that to you, Nick. How was the experience for you?
Well, it's interesting how much is going on in there. When you start to look at it, it's pretty chaotic for me anyway.
Well, that's good to know, isn't it?
It certainly shows how many CPUs I'm using up.
Yeah.
In the background.
Well, yeah, I think sometimes when we do this and we realize, holy cow, I can't meditate for 180 seconds. What's going on? My poor brain is it's on fire, Well, knowing that is a very useful understanding. You get an insight into yourself, and then you start to realize, you know what? If I did this, I bet I'd get better at it. Because then this is like anything; it's just a practice. You're going to get better at it. You can become a master at this. It's not that hard.
And so that is the idea that by practicing allowing your brain the space to slow down, that then it will slow down a bit, so that.
Yeah, as a result, you'll have improved attention, you'll have better emotional regulation, you'll be more compassionate, and you'll reduce your stress and anxiety. Now, if those things aren't appealing to you, I fear for your future. Everybody wants that stuff.
It's like quite a good deal for 3 minutes a day.
Exactly. And it feels good. It's a relief. If you have been spending any part of your day feeling like you just need some relief, you just need a break, this is it. This is a way to get it. And it's something you can do in a lunch break. It's something you can do sitting in your car. It's something you can do in the restroom that nobody else has to know about. Nobody will even know you're doing it. So you don't have to worry about prying eyes like, what is he up to now? You can step into the next room and be done, and no one will be the wiser.
For me, it always goes back to the, I think I mentioned this in a previous episode, but the idea of that during my Ph.D., I went to a yoga class. The person said, stop. The instructor said, okay, just think about nothing. And my brain said, what do you mean I can't stop thinking about nothing? I have a responsibility. I have a project. I've got problems to solve. And then I realized, what am I doing?
Yeah.
I don't need to do this all of the time. In fact, it's probably not a good idea to do this all the time. So just relax.
Exactly. In fact, if you want to be better at doing it when you're doing it, you need these times of refreshment so that you're at your best when those times arise.
It's like an athlete thinking that they have to run all the time to get fitter. They don't need to rest as well, and it's crazy how much we just neglect our minds by expecting them to be on all the time and allowing them to run these processes in the background all the time, because that's just inbuilt in us. So I guess this is about just starting to move towards being able to have, if not an off switch, then a volume switch on those background processes.
Yep, and this is a hands-on, nuts and bolts thing you can do without any special training, without any special talent. Anyone can do this, even you. So please do. So I think that'll wrap it up for now, Nick.
Okay, thank you. That was very useful. So, and the good thing about that little meditation is that maybe what we'll do actually is we'll make a link in the show notes to just the meditation. Because the good thing about that is if you want to go back and do a 3-minute meditation every day, you can just listen to that audio.
Yeah, that's great.
Minutes every day, and you'll be famous, Ken. Listen to you over and over. But yeah, okay. So in the show notes, this is a good episode to download the show notes for. Again, go to bitesizebio.com/The Happy Scientist. Find episode 21. Download the PDF with the show notes on them. There are a bunch of 5 or 6 different studies that talk about the benefits of mindfulness. Experiments on that. There are a couple of podcasts that Ken talked about, and the book author with some great material there that you can digest if you find this easy. And then, of course, we'll add the link to the 3-minute meditation, so you can do it again without having to find it again inside the podcast.
All right, sounds great.
And of course, if you don't want to listen to Ken again for any reason, there are plenty of other ways to just set aside 3 minutes, just silence or a little bit of music or whatever you want to go with for the meditation.
Exactly.
So only remains for me to mention the Happy Scientist Club Facebook page. That's facebook.com/The Happy Scientist Club. In there, we will be talking about various the various concepts we look at in this podcast. We'll be looking at them from different angles so that you can get even more out of it, hopefully, and use them to propel yourself to greater happiness and success. So thank you again, Ken, for a great episode and a really useful tool that I think people will get a lot of benefit from.
Great. Thanks, Nick.
No worries, and we'll see you again all in the next episode. Goodbye.
Bye now.
The Happy Scientist is brought to you by Bitesize Bio, your mentor in the lab. Bitesize Bio features thousands of articles and webinars contributed by hundreds of Ph.D. scientists and scientific companies who freely offer their hard-won wisdom and solutions to the Bitesize Bio community.